perm class. And I know if I even just would have seen the name of the class, I'd been like, what is going on? Why are we focusing on men's perming right now? Well, the reason why is because this is a very popular trend that's going on right now in the styling world. So where it really originated from, and it's been going on there for a very long time, some of you may know this, is it's really coming over from Asia, specifically Korea and Japan. The men there have been perming their hair for forever. I mean, for decades. It's never really stopped. So that trend we're starting to see more flood over through Europe and then over here to North America with us. So we never want to be left out of the trends that are coming in. So that's why we're doing this class today, is to look at some really great inspiration of what does men's perming look like, right? Because I know, especially in North America, we have this idea of the word perm, right? Which automatically we kind of cringe, we hold our nose. It's just kind of this icky sort of feel. We think of the 80s where those perms were actually amazing. Like when you think about it, technically they were awesome, like the big rocker hair and everything. It just isn't the taste of what we're doing today. So I want you to strike from your minds all preconceptions that you have around perming and all of that. I don't know if any of you have tried Ref Curly Perm, whether it be on a male or female or anyone in between, but we really do have an exceptional perming product. So we are going to definitely talk today about the features and benefits of our perm and why it is so special. But let's go ahead and hop in. I'm going to do a little screen sharing here. Here we go. Let's get into our slideshow. So the Ref Men Curly Perm, which is the name of the class. So here's one of our inspo pictures. Moving on. Oh, sorry. Moving on. So today we're going to talk about the trend inspiration behind this great movement that we're seeing with texture in men. And that's what we're calling it, texture for the modern man. I don't really use the word perm a lot in my salon. I use the word texture because that I think is a more accurate depiction of what we're really doing also. In certain cultures, the term perm doesn't actually mean going curly, it actually means going straight. So like in a lot of African American salons, when they go in for a perm, they're actually going in for a straightening service. It's just, we kind of have taken that word, especially like I said, from the 80s, and just we only think of curly hair. Well, it's a permanent texture service. So this is a permanent curling service, and they're all also permanent straightening services. So think about the verbiage that we use too. So I always just talk about texture services and what kind of texture we're doing. Are we adding wave and curl, or are we going to be smoothing and straightening the hair out? We're going to talk about the science of our perm, because our perm really is very unique. The solution is from other perms that are out there on the market. We're going to look at some creative wraps, because I think that's the biggest one, is how are we doing this for our men? Are we perming the same as we do for our little old ladies or our longer haired gals? So we'll get some inspiration for that, and then talk about aftercare, maintenance, and then styling tips, especially educating our clientele on how to take care of their perm at home or texture service. So I've gathered some inspirational pictures to show what some of the men's hair trends are right now. And when you look at these two gorgeous gentlemen, I mean, you see waves, you see curl, and a lot of guys are looking for this type of style. They want movement in their hair. They want that look of curly or wavy texture, right? I mean, how gorgeous are those? Here's an inspiration pic of a perm I actually did. So the gentleman that's on the left, I permed him, and we used an inspirational picture. I don't know if it was this exact one, but extremely similar to the one on the right. He is of Asian descent, and he's got very, very thick, straight, yet kind of coarse hair. It was just bone straight. And he wanted to be able to have some options for styling. He wanted to be able to have a little bit of texture and movement, sort of like the inspirational picture on the right. So we did a wave service on him, so he's able to open up his styling regimen. I mean, he can get different looks than just what he was only able to do with his really extremely straight in kind of coarser, thick hair. Few more ideas of what we're seeing on gentlemen and in the styles right now. So we kind of go from a little more curly hair. I know sometimes when we think of curly perms on men, we might think of Justin Timberlake circa early 2000s, his ramen looking hair. We're not going quite that curly with what we're seeing on trend right now, but definitely a little bit on the tighter side, as you can see some of the models on the left have, even to like a softer wave. We're going to be seeing a lot of just perming on the top with the gentlemen because they're still doing their great fades up with their haircuts, but they do want some texture and movement on the top. So they're still staying very nice and tailored looking, right? So very professional looking, but having more option as far as movement for the top style of their hair. The 4 pictures of the model on the right are another really good example of adding texture to hair that could be extremely straight or fall very limp. And maybe they don't want just that flat hair, right? They want to have a little bit of movement to it, some lift. They want body, not necessarily curl or wave. So depending on the rod size that we're using of your roller or your form curler, whatever it is that you choose to use, the larger size rod you go, you can just add body. It doesn't always have to be curl and wave. We are just adding volume at this point. So you can see the gentleman on the right has got a really nice volume and lift to his style, right? So very masculine looking. None of these are what I would consider being too soft or too feminine. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of guys are looking for this for their styles. Also because generally speaking, they're spending a little less time styling their hair than women do. It's just kind of a fact. Men aren't opposed to spending a little bit of time doing their hair, but you know, they want a good result with as little effort as possible. And adding lift, adding volume, adding curl and wave is something that you can give to them to help enhance their style with little effort, right? So better result, less work. So I really did start noticing male perms kind of late 2020 all over TikTok. So I think it was kind of more of a funny type of experiment that these guys were doing on TikTok, like, hey, I'm going to go into a salon and get a perm. Look how goofy this is. But really, when you look at the end result, it's amazing. They're getting this beautiful lift and wave in their hair. It's very modern. It's very fashion forward, right? And when you're looking at the models, they're all younger. I mean, these are all young to mid 20 something guys that want to experiment more with their hair. They want to have a different look. They want to be able to have options. So you can see on the left-hand side, those 2 models definitely have more of a curl wave, where the gentleman on the right, he's got, and this is actually tagged, you'll find a lot of pictures like this tag Korean perm, because it is a very, very popular trending phrase when we're looking at male perming. So if you Google Korean perm, you're going to see a lot of results with it. But he just wanted a little lift, a little body, some movement in his hair, because his hair probably was pretty stick straight and falling flat. And so you can see it's absolutely wonderful that he just got some movement to it. So very masculine, very tailored, right? So who are perms for? Okay, so I love this depiction right here because this is exactly really who I've been perming as far as my male clientele in salon. You can see his hair is finer, a little bit on the thinner side, right? And that's another thing that these texture services can do for you, for your male clients, is add the appearance of thickness. So if you have somebody with thinning hair, a lot of celebrity guys actually do this. This is a trick they use to get thicker, fuller looking hair. So you can't tell recession as much. You can't tell the balding and thinning as much because the hair is now lifted. It's got more volume to it, right? So you can see this gentleman has really fine, a little bit thinner straight hair. And then with a waving service / curling service, it looks so much thicker. The density is amazing. The lift that he's got is great. And this is something that's going to be extremely easy for him to style at home, right? So we are seeing a lot of it with our more short hair male guests, where, like I said, they're still doing the fades on the side. So they can end up wearing a little bit down like a fringe. They can faux hawk it a lot easier. The gentleman earlier that I took the picture of that I permed, that's really what he wanted. He wanted his hair to be able to lift and kind of do a pompadour style, sort of like this model right here, but he wasn't able to do that because of how his hair felt so straight and forward. And the curling texture perm service was able to give him that lift, be able to give him the option of styling the hair the way that he wanted to maximize flow and movement. We will see that there are styles, not just for short hair gentlemen, but also mid and longer hair. We'll see some examples of that in a minute. So another area where I love doing male perms is hair that has cowlicks that make certain styles impossible. We can reform the strength of a cowlick using a waving or curling service. I know a lot of times we think about straightening, smoothing, kind of keratin-ish for cowlicks and hair directional growth. But I want you to start thinking of using a perming service to correct that as well, right? So if somebody's hair falls straight down, we can do a waving service that brings it up a little bit more. Or if there's a really strong part, right, we can curl it in the opposite direction, set it, perm it, and then they're going to get so much more movement, kind of breaking that cowlick up. So we can definitely do spot perms in certain areas to kind of help those challenging sections of hair. And then again, hair that lacks body, hair that just falls flat, falls straight, perfect candidate for our men's texture service. So some of the features and benefits of our perm, because there actually are quite a lot. We're REF, okay, so we're vegan. We know that. We have moisturizing and soothing aloe vera in our perm. So we're going to see a lot, actually, I haven't seen any, so I'll go ahead and say that, but we're going to see less sensitivity than other perms that maybe we've used before, because the aloe vera is antibacterial, it's soothing, it also adds quite a bit of shine, so we're going to get a lot of benefits from the aloe. The provitamin B5, that is going to help with moisture, but also strength of hair. It's really protecting on a cellular level the hair while we're going through our breaking of those disulfide bonds in the hair. We have quinoa protein. We know we love quinoa here at REF, so that is our vegan protein that we're using to add strength into this service. We have wheat and soy amino acids. So this is one product in REF where we do have wheat. You are going to find that in a lot of curling products. We actually don't have that in our styling products like our Curl Power. But we do have it here in our perm, and that's going to help with the bonding and the strengthening of the perm. We're going to talk a little bit about Fission Caraveg 18, kind of some fancy terminology, and really all of that is about the protection and strength of the hair while we're going through this texture service. We have Color Preserve System. So this is absolutely a color safe service to be performing. We can even color after our guests have their texture service. So if we want to go ahead and put some soft color, some permanent color on same day after our texture service, we can absolutely do that. Super easy to mix, very simple to follow instructions. We have our 3-piece customized system. I love this because there are only 3 pieces to this perm. There aren't 10 different boxes depending on what strength we're going to be using. We have our curly perm, and that is our perming solution. We have our fluid regulator, and that is what we will add into the curly perm to control the level of intensity of the curly perm. And then we have our neutral fixing fluid, which is our neutralizer. Our selector wheel, this comes with all of our perm kits. So easy to use. I've got my perm wheel right here. So our perm can be modified to all aspects of hair and condition, no matter if you have thick and resistant hair, colored hair, highlighted hair, bleached hair. We can perm any of those, assuming that the hair is still has good integrity to it, right? We don't want to be perming anybody that is overly dry or has any damage to their hair. We definitely would want to maybe do some Proplex treatment, some damage control treatments prior to any perming service that we're going to be doing, because working on the strength, the integrity of the hair first before doing any chemical service is always recommended, even when we're coloring. So the wheel is really great. You can see, you can just kind of go to it and see, oh, does my client have thick and resistant hair, normal hair, thin hair? and it tells you how much exactly curly perm solution and fluid regulator to add together. And we just use squeeze applicator bottles. We do our mixing on a scale that way, because it is very important to use accurate mixing when we're mixing our curly perm and fluid regulator together. But you can really customize the perm solution just using those 3 bottles, which is fantastic, right? So a little science of perming, because we're going to go here because I think it's all good to have a refresher of what are we doing when we're perming. So we know that hair is made up of bundles of protein called keratin, right? So when we're perming, what we're doing is we're taking the disulfide bonds that are held together in the cortex of the hair, and we're basically breaking those apart, because what we want to do is reform how they are held together using our rollers, right? So we're taking straight hair and we want to break those bonds down, and we're going to reform them using our curlers, rollers. There's many different ways you can do perming, so whatever method you're using, and then we're going to be neutralizing the bonds again with our neutralizer to that new form, right? Oop, oop, there we go. So just a reminder of what the hair looks like, just in case we all forgot, because beauty school is a long time ago. We have our hair cuticle, which is our protective layer, the cortex, and then the medulla. And the cortex, that's where those disulfide bonds are held. So we are actually going into the cortex to break down those disulfide bonds, so we can then rebond them in their new form. So we have an ammonium thioglycolate perm that we're using, which is an alkaline perm, and we're using that to break down or soften the bonds of the hair. The hydrogen peroxide, which is our neutralizer, replaces those sulfide bonds and creates the new one called cysteine bonds. And that's what is actually making the new shape of the hair, right? So we're taking it from that straight shape and we're making it curly or wavy. So the rods are what's going to help us the rods are going to help us form that new shape over whatever it is that we have in the hair to form it. Alkaline perms, because our perm is alkaline, we do not require external heat, so do not put our perm under heat. Our alkaline perms generally produce a little bit firmer of a curl, which means a little bit longer lasting, which that is absolutely what our clients are looking for. They don't want something that's going to wash out or soften within 2 weeks, right? They want a little more longevity from it. Generally used for virgin or resistant hair, but because of our wheel, because of our fluid regulator, we can add that into our solution to make it for hair that's previously colored, highlighted, bleached, finer. So we really hit all the marks with our very special formula that we have. So Fission Caraveg 18, this is our very special strengthener. That's just how I like to look at it in our perm. This is what helps reduce damage when perming, because when we think about it, we really are going into the hair, breaking disulfide bonds and rebonding them back together, right? So that is kind of a big deal that we're doing that to hair. So what our Caraveg 18 is going to do is reinforce the strength of the hair fibers. Okay, it's going to help protect against breakage and brittleness. It's going to provide a lot of conditioning, long-lasting conditioning properties to the hair. It does this a lot by improving hydration, preventing water loss. That is one reason why we get into hair breaking and become brittle, is because the extreme amount of water loss that the hair incurs during chemical services. Well, with our Caraveg 18, we're going to help prevent all of that moisture loss. It's also, there's a lot of amino acids in Caraveg 18, okay? And what amino acids do, they're protectors. They're not only strengtheners, because a lot of the time we think of amino acids and protein as just being powerful strengtheners, but this is also going to go a step further and be a cellular protector. So it's going to help protect from damage from our chemical service. How great is that, right? We are completely reforming the shape of hair, yet we're strengthening it and protecting it at the same time. This is why we get such great results from our Rest Curly Perm. So through our perm, through the Caraveg 18, we're going to see improved elasticity of the hair, increased hair strength, which is really interesting to think about, right? So after a perming service, we are going to have increased hair strength. Amazing. It's going to be a damage reducer. The Caraveg 18 is going to age in the recovery process of the hair. Because really, when we're putting those bonds back together over our curl formers, over our rollers, we are going into hair recovery. That's really what's happening during that neutralizing process. So it's going to help aid in that with the strength of the hair. Frizz reduction. This is a big one because I don't know if you've done perms before and they've come down and they're just quite a bit frizzy. One thing you will notice with the ref perm, as long as it's properly processed, I will say that again, properly processed, then you are going to see a massive reduction in frizz, even though we're getting a nice curly shape. People associate curl and frizz together, which is generally true, but you're going to see a lot of frizz reduction due to our Care of Edge 18. And then you're going to see increased shine. I have never not seen a lot of shine coming out of the perm and curly services that I've done, and I love that because historically, during that bond breaking process, sometimes you can lose shine, you can lose luster, but also with the addition of our quinoa protein is very much known for its shine. We are going to end up with a really shiny result with our hair. If you feel like you would need it, the client needs a little bit of a TLC on their hair prior to their texture service, we do recommend using the Ref Proplex and you doing a pre-treatment on the hair. This is a little bit different than our damage control treatment. Our damage control treatment, if you do suggest to your client that they receive that service to improve the integrity of their hair prior to any perming or color service, when it comes to perming, we don't recommend doing the full damage control treatment within 2 to 3 days of a perming service. So if you want to do it, it's fine. Just give it a couple days leeway there. But our Proplex pre-treatment can be done same day with our curly perm service. So what you're going to do, a little bit different than the damage control treatment, is we're going to gently shampoo the hair with your Ref shampoo of choice. Usually I'm either using Intense Hydrate or Ultimate Repair because the hair, again, needs a little bit more TLC. Rinse the hair as normal, and then we're going to towel blot. We're going to apply a generous amount of Proplex 2 Perfector. And when we say generous, that doesn't mean completely saturate the head where you can see the product, but make sure you're using enough to coat the hair. We want to make sure you're feeling that little bit of slip on the hair. We're going to let that sit on the hair for 1 to 2 minutes. Then we're going to rinse thoroughly, towel blot, and then you can proceed with your rolling of the hair for the curly perm service. So very easy directions for the curly perm. You're going to find all the directions on the back of your curly wheel. So it's great. I always keep that very handy. The service is very simple. So after we towel dry the hair, okay, if you're not doing the pre-treatment with Proplex, then you can just start with shampooing whichever Ref shampoo or conditioner that you prefer. I generally like to use on very healthy hair, use Weightless Volume because it's a beautiful clarifier without overstripping. So it will help to remove a little excess impurities from the hair to prep it for the curling service. So you can spray in Ref leave-in conditioner for detangling through the hair and comb it through. A lot of the time I will just use my spray bottle. You can use leave-in conditioner, but you don't have to. If you like using water, that's absolutely appropriate. And then we're going to wrap the hair in the rods appropriate for the desired result. I am an end paper person. I always use end papers, even if I'm cutting more than 2 inches off the hair. I'm just a creature of habit. If you are cutting more than 2 inches off the hair after the perm service, it's up to you whether you want to use end papers or not. I love using Stay Smooth 141 around the hairline as a protective barrier cream before the service. So a little barrier cream. After everything's wrapped up, we're going to also place a cotton strip around the entire hairline. Or sometimes if I'm just perming the top, I will place the cotton, and you'll see a couple examples of this later, just around where the perm rods are to help soak up some of that solution so it doesn't go all over the bottom of the hair, especially if I'm spot perming. Make sure we're protecting our clients. We want to make sure we have extra towels around them, drapes, towel around the drape, as to not let any of that solution drip down their necks or get onto their clothing. So when we're mixing, we're going to go back to our wheel, our handy dandy wheel. We're going to choose the appropriate formula for our client's hair, whether they're thick or resistant, if they're normal. When it says thin, that really is, just look at the density of the hair strand itself, right? Because the thinner, finer the hair, because you can also think of thin as fine, right? So we'll want to do some mixing. Grab your applicator bottle, and then I always do it on a scale just because mixing is very important to me. And sometimes I don't love using the applicator bottle's line. You absolutely can, but get out a scale, go ahead and weigh everything out and mix appropriately. Gonna make sure to shake the ingredients up a little bit. I actually do more of a swirling motion, and then we're going to saturate the rods completely. Usually with perming surfaces, we begin the application at the back nape of the neck, but really if we're just spot perming, maybe even the top, just start in the backmost section of where the rods are. We want to make sure that we're saturating the rods completely with our curly perm and fluid regulator solution, trying to avoid applying directly to the scalp, because we aren't necessarily perming the scalp. We're perming the hair, and we want to make sure that the solution really gets into the rod and the hair is completely saturated. The solution will get on the scalp. That is okay. You just don't need to apply it directly to the scalp. So we want to, then once we apply the product, change out that cotton, put some fresh cotton on there, and put a processing cap over the areas where the rods are present, whether it's the whole entire head or just a section. We have suggested processing times, as you see on our curl wheel, but I will say these are suggested processing times, right? So this isn't a kind of perm where it says, oh, it says 13 to 15 minutes, so I'll set my timer for 14 and then come back and rinse and it's done. With our perm, we want to make sure that we're staying near it and checking it, because different factors will increase the speed or decrease the speed of the perm. If you have a lot of air conditioning going on, sometimes that can slow it down. So really the air temperature in the room. If your client generates a lot of excess heat, especially through their head, they may process a little bit faster. So we want to make sure that we're taking some test curls. We do our lift and lay technique, which I will be demonstrating for you in a little bit. So we want to check our perm using the lift and lay technique. If the hair stands up on the rod, you want to keep processing. Once it lays down to the side, we can go ahead and start rinsing, and we know it's done. So at this point, before we rinse, we want to towel blot the solution from the hair completely using a either terry towel. Some people like using paper towels. I try to avoid them just for paper waste reasons, but really blotting it, because that helps with the aroma of the solution, leaving the hair a little bit more. We want to now rinse our rods. We want to use as warm of water as our clients can tolerate. We don't want to scald them, but we do want to use really warm water. And we want to rinse for a full 5 minutes. Now, this is where you will want to set a timer or be very meticulous about looking at the clock and rinsing for a full 5 minutes, because we want to make sure that we are really getting all of that curly perm solution out of the hair. If we don't do a really great job rinsing it out, it can stay in the hair and lead to over processing a little bit. So we want to make sure that we're getting all of that out of the hair. Leaving the rods in place, we want to now towel blot the hair, getting as much moisture out as we can. I will sometimes let my clients sit and air neutralize, that's what I call it, for a few minutes after I towel blot, just, give the hair a little bit of extra time to release some of the moisture. We're going to apply some new cotton around the hairline or the rolled areas, and we're then going to apply the neutral fixing fluid. What I love about our neutral fixing fluid is it does come in already applicator style bottle. So we can go ahead, we don't have to transfer this into another applicator bottle. We can use this just straight out of the bottle. With the rods remaining in place, process a full 5 minutes. Again, set a timer, because it is important that we give the neutralizer the appropriate amount of time to do its job, because it is reforming those disulfide bonds into cysteine bonds, right? So we want to make sure that we are giving it enough time to really form those bonds. We're going to drop the rods, and then we're going to apply just a little bit of neutral fixing fluid and gently scrunch it into the hair. And we're going to process an additional 2 to 3 minutes. I always just do 3 because it's not going to hurt. At this point, we're going to rinse thoroughly and completely. And the next part is my favorite thing about our ref curly perm is we immediately shampoo the hair. There is 0 downtime with our ref curly perm. There's no waiting 2 days before we shampoo. Our guest is shampooed immediately. So we want to make sure we're using a shampoo that has a pH of 6 or less. which we're probably already using Ref shampoos, which are a pH of 5.5, so it's perfect. We want to do a nice lather and let that shampoo sit on the hair about 3 to 5 minutes. And what this is going to do is really help bring the pH of the hair back down, back to its normal state. Then going to rinse, and we're going to condition with whatever Ref conditioner of your choice. 9 times out of 10, I'm reaching for the Intense Hydrate because curls love moisture. So I'm going to give them a good little moisture treatment before we rinse that out, and then you towel dry, and you can move on to your cutting or styling at that. So just a couple little notes. Like I said, if you're cutting more than 2 inches off the hair, you may omit using rolling papers or end papers. Those are great. If you're using rods with band, avoid the bands marking the hair by applying plastic or wooden protectors. I usually love buying more of the rounded tip toothpicks. Those work really well for me if you can't find the plastic pins for the rollers. And then you may immediately color the hair after the Ref curly perm. It is possible to also color it before. There's nothing wrong with that, but you may see a little bit of color bleed, just the slightest bit, when after the curly perm service. You might notice a lightening of the color, maybe about a half level, so that can be expected. So I usually tend to color the hair directly after my curly perm service. So let's talk about wraps, right? So this is where I think a lot of people want to know, like, okay, I understand the perm, I understand how to do it. How am I wrapping the hair for these looks, like those inspirational pictures that we saw at the beginning of the presentation? Well, we always want to remember that the direction of your rod determines the direction of the drop, right? So it's kind of like when we're thinking about using curling irons or hot rollers or any type of curling tool, right? The direction of our rod is going to determine the direction of the drop of the curl. So we want to keep that in mind. If the hair falls really flat forward, then we definitely want to be rolling it back. Think of more of a standard, what we call our standard rod placement, because we want to lift the hair away from the direction that is there where it's falling flat, right? The size of the section and rod determines the size of the curl. So in beauty school, we are always taught that we don't want to use sections larger than the diameter of our rod, which is true. You can, however, go outside of that. So we do sometimes use larger sections than the diameter of the rod because we might be looking for a looser pattern, right? We might be looking for not so much lift at the root. So as long as the section isn't too thick that we can get all of the hair saturated with solution, then the size of your section, you can kind of play with that a little bit. When we're placing things horizontally, you're going to get a little more curl, a little more volume, as opposed to vertically laying things on the head, you're going to get a looser, bigger curler wave. As you can see in this picture right here, I took straight partings when I was rolling these sections. We do have a gentleman here with a nice tight fade. So we just wanted to get some volume on the top so he could be able to do more of a pompadour style, get a little more lift. Directionally, the way that his hair grew, I wrapped it the opposite way of his natural hair growth because we wanted to be able to get a little more lift and not fall so flat to the one way that it was falling flat for him. Something that I also really enjoy doing is doing zigzag partings. That makes it a little more natural, especially if you don't like the look of those part lines after you do a perm service. The good news is because we can shampoo and condition afterwards, that usually breaks those lines up. But if you're afraid of having those really stark perm part lines, please do a zigzag pattern during your sectioning. It looks definitely very natural and you won't get those hard lines. Hair looks most natural when multiple wrap styles are used or different sides of rods, because when we're thinking of naturally curly hair doesn't all look the same. It doesn't all go the same direction, and they're not all the same size curls. So switch it up a little bit with rod size, as I did here. We do want to make sure that we're using appropriate rod size and nothing too big, that we can still get a, at least 1.5 to 2 rounds around the hair to be able to get a wave pattern in there, right? Because if we use a rod that's too large, we might not quite get that wave that we're looking for. Also wrapping in different directions, because natural curls go in different directions, that when you change up the directions of your wrapping pattern, it will look a little bit more natural. Here's an example of some different rods that were used for this gentleman's hair. We can see we have a couple of combinations. And we have actually 3 different types of curlers being used. We have our foam formers, we have our banded rods, and then we just have our latch rods. I really do like those blue latch rods because they don't put a lot of pressure onto the hair, so you won't get those band marks, especially if you're not looking to use toothpicks or the curler picks. But you can also see that they did use the band rods as well. And just making sure that the band is a little bit closer to the part line and not directly in the middle of the curl is going to help with any of the tension banding that you might get from a perm. Another great example of a partial perm. So you can see that a couple different colors were used here, a couple different size rods, and directionally it's all different. So we can see on the very bottom rod closest to us is they've rolled that one up directionally. It's not rolled down, it's rolled up. And you can tell that because when you look at his hair curls up, right? They didn't want the curl coming down, they wanted the curl going up for the style. So they definitely wound those up. Whereas the ones coming down the center section, the mohawk section of his head, they've rolled back in traditional standard perm setting style because they want those curls definitely get more volume to be able to go up and back, not forward. So changing direction is really going to help you get more of that soft, natural look. And I think this gentleman looks great. I think he looks absolutely wonderful with his curly, wavy hair. Here's a sectioning I did on my model that we'll take a look at in a little bit. His name is Kyle. And for Kyle, he had longer hair, so we did do a full head perm. So you'll see the smaller rod in the front. I've got the purple rod because he had very short hair in that section. So that was the largest appropriate size for that. And I did more of a diagonal base because I really wanted those curls to kind of come in more of a natural diagonal fall. Some of them I rolled up and in, like towards the scalp, up and away. And some I rolled down towards the scalp just to create different looks, different patterns. Some ideas of traditional rods that we use. I see a lot in men's perming because of the length of their hair. It's usually on the shorter side. Rods are the tool of choice for men's perming, but there are tons of different tools out there. So you choose whatever you're comfortable with and whatever one you feel is going to give you the look that you're looking for. Aftercare maintenance and styling tips. So our curl or wave lasts approximately 3 to 4 months. And the reason I love this is because they gently do soften away. So you never get a really hard line of perm outgrowth where you have this super straight root area with kind of curly or wavy ends. Everything sort of naturally softens. So then when it's time to retexturize the hair, we can go back and perm the whole thing because it is all dropped at the same rate, right? So we don't have to do any just root lifts or root perming because the ends are still so curly. We can really go in and just do the whole thing all over again. I loved this picture. I just had to put it on here. Never fight with a man with a perm. I think that's excellent advice we should all follow. So home care. So Intense Hydrate series is definitely the #1 series that we want to be prescribing to our curly textured guests, right? Because we're going to have that beautiful coconut oil in there that's going to help with moisture retention and help prevent moisture loss, and is going to give anti-frizz properties to it as well. The Intense Hydrate Mask is a product I use all the time on curly hair as actually styling product. I think it transitions into a beautiful hydrating styling cream. So a lot of the time I will just use a little bit of my Intense Hydrate Mask, scrunch it into the hair, gives it that great extra moisture. It absorbs in, it doesn't sit and feel greasy. It dries very soft. It doesn't look like you've got conditioner in your hair. So I might prep the hair with that, especially for low maintenance guests, like some gentlemen are, just using a bit of Intense Hydrating Mask to just hydrate those curls because it will help reduce frizz is an option that you can offer for just really easy styling. Other leave-in care options are, of course, our leave-in conditioner, our leave-in treatment, and our Wonder Oil. With our leave-in conditioner and leave-in treatment, we are going to get some thermal protective qualities, which you're not necessarily going to get from the Intense Hydrate mask because it's not designed for that. So we would want to follow up with something thermal protective if we are using the Intense Hydrate mask and adding heat. So leave-in conditioner, leave-in treatment are wonderful options, and Wonder Oil is good anytime, whether you're going from wet or dry, or if you have next day hair and you need a little bit of a curl refresher, doing a pump or two of Wonder Oil and then scrunching it, working it through the hair to kind of reform the curls, reduce the frizz that may have happened over a night of sleeping. Styling products, the main go-tos when we think of curly hair and rough styling products are definitely our Fiber Mousse 345, Spray Wax 434, which might be my favorite curly hair product, and then also Curl Power 244. So you can use any of these wet or dry. That's what's so magical about them. Fiber Mousse, I have seen being put in dry hair for people that want a little more of like a stiff, kind of more crunchy look. It is a thing, people like it. But if we're looking for softer, more natural looks, definitely adding everything while the hair is damp is the way to go for it. We have questions, so I know if we have questions, we can ask them, but I am going to still show you a few more things while we're on here. Let me get back to everybody. Come on back, world. Okay, here we go. So there we are. Okay, great. So let me bring over Kyle here, everybody. This is Kyle. We gave him a full head perm the other day. He absolutely loves it, and he doesn't smell like a perm at all. And that's another thing that I really love about rough curly perm is you don't end up smelling like sulfur, like eggs. Let's just say it for what it is, right? Because we do have a beautiful aroma in our fluid regulator in our neutralizing solution. I think it smells kind of like grape candy. Everybody has an opinion on it though, right? So I want to demonstrate for you the lift and lay technique, okay? I'm going to make sure we can all see this rod. So I have a rod, just standard placement in Kyle's hair. And here's how we lift and lay, okay? So the rod is rolled in very tightly to the head. Now, instead of unrolling the rod and looking for that S-shaped pattern that we're generally used to doing for for checking perms, is we want to keep the rod as tight to the scalp as we possibly can, okay? While gently unrolling the rod, we want to go about 2 turns out, okay? If the hair is standing straight up, which it is because his hair is dry at this point, that means that the processing needs to continue. So we're going to wrap that right back up, clip it, and we might check another section because it is important to check at least 2 rods while we're looking at processing. If we unroll the rod 2 turns and the hair lays to the side or it just kind of falls down to the side, that is the lay. That means that it's up, we're processed. So that's when we can go ahead, make sure you check different sections of it, and you can go ahead and start rinsing. Well, we start with towel blotting, but then rinsing the perm, we know it's completely processed. Thank you, Kyle, for that. So I want to know, well, you don't have to say it out, you can type it in or just marinate on it, thinking about the guests that you have that might benefit from this service, right? Think about the male clientele that you have that maybe has thinning hair, that's struggling a little bit with styling, or maybe they want something new, right? But they don't necessarily want to change their haircut, because that happens all the time with male clients, is they want to change, but they also kind of really don't want to change. So maybe offering a texture service to them. Show them some of the pictures, examples like kind of how I did, and put it into real practice. Because sometimes saying, hey, I could perm you, that would be great. It can scare people, right? Because we do have this preconception of what a perm looks like. We have this idea of, again, that 80s, the crunchy, the poodle, but show them pictures of these different texture services of what soft waves can do, or what even a bodifying texture service can do. Just giving a little bit of lift, giving a little bit of volume, right, to the style could be very helpful. We want to make sure that we're not excluding our male clientele from change. We want to make sure that we're always encouraging them to stay on trend, trying new things, right? Explaining that, oh, this texture service might make your daily routine even easier. You're going to get better results with the same or less effort, right? So that's the Ref Curly Perm for the modern mat. And I hope that you kind of took this as some inspiration. I hope that you're not too afraid to give it a try. Find yourself a model like Kyle, like I did, and just give it a practice on it, right? Take a look at some of these inspirations that we're seeing from across the seas and in trends, and give it a shot with your clients, because I think change is good. And let's start having some fun in this new year.
So that was so great, Nicole. I'm getting a lot of like private messages on the side. People thought your slides were so perfect. Your suggestions were great. Your presentation style is, as always, so infectious.
I love it.
Yeah, so really well done. I think there was a ton of great information in there. People are super excited to get this recording. I did record it, so we'll get it out to some people and send it out. It's not a huge group, guys, so if anybody does have a question, if you want to unmute yourself, you're certainly welcome to. If not, we'll probably wrap it up.
I have a few questions. Just writing along the way. Nicole, because I really don't do a lot of perms, but I kind of want to get into it, especially knowing all the ingredients that are in it and how different it seems from a typical perm that I was used to when I first started beauty school. Do you wear gloves during the service? Like, do you recommend to wear gloves during the service, or not needed?
Anytime I'm touching anything chemical, I wear gloves.
Okay.
And that's just, I just do. It's best practice, right? Okay. When we're talking about just safety for ourselves, when we're talking about OSHA things, also it is recommended when we're dealing with solution to wear gloves. We get to think about it. The solution is touching their scalp, right? So it's nothing caustic. If you touch it, it's not going to be bad. But because we're touching so many things all the time, I do recommend gloves. I only wear it really when I'm applying the solution, because there's no reason to actually touch the hair while it's on the rod.
Right.
So when you're towel blotting, you don't have to, right? When you're rinsing, you're not touching the rods. It's fine. And at that point, it's all rinsed out anyway.
Okay. So treat color service, how you would wear gloves.
Absolutely. And that's just because we are touching so many things all the time. We want to protect our money makers, right?
Just a few more questions.
I have all the time. Go
ahead. So when you're doing the process, and I found it interesting that you can immediately shampoo, you can immediately condition. So for example, if you're not doing a color service afterwards, would you, instead of conditioner, could you use the mask, or would that be too much?
No. So as always with our Ref Care line, you can always use the mask in lieu of the conditioner. Okay. You're just going to get more of that concentrated product. So like whichever one you're using, right? Eliminate color, intense hydrate, right? We want to make sure we're leaving it on at least 3 minutes, because per the directions of the mask, because that gives us a polite opportunity to be able to fully do its job. So if you want to use the mask, absolutely. Is it fully necessary? I mean, maybe not.
Okay.
So whichever one you want to use is totally fine.
I just wasn't sure if it would be too much, because you know how some people can have dry hair and maybe a little extra hydration is good, but would it be too much? That's my own.
It depends on the hair, right? So if the client has really fine, thin hair, maybe it might be a little much for them, even though it rinses very clean, right? So maybe I wouldn't use it as, like I described, I sometimes use it as like a prep product, like a styling product where I scrunch in the hair. I might not use it for that guest because they have fine hair, right? It's a little softer, but for my guests that are coarser, curlier, it'd be more appropriate for them.
All right. And how much time realistically would you allow yourself on the service itself, kind of from start to finish? And I'm sure it could depend on, if you're doing just the top half of the head, it could depend obviously on all of the hair. How much time realistically?
So I book my perms for an hour and a half.
Okay.
And that's just usually standard, right? Okay. And that is because, and I'm not talking about somebody's got hair down to their booty.
Right.
Average hair, and that's even for a full head wrap, right? So that's kind of where I start. Okay. If I feel like I need more time, then I'll extend that service. Usually I'm having a consultation with somebody first, even if it's digitally. Now I offer FaceTime or Zoom consultations because not everybody wants to come in first, because then I can see their hair. I know how much time they have. When the world was, a little bit before, I always made it a point to require a consultation before booking this service, because I also want them to know the maintenance of it. Some people are looking, I just want to get out, shake my hair like a dog and go, and it looks perfect. May or may not be a thing, right? So I want them to know that like product is recommended. It's going to last 3 to 4 months. I'm giving them kind of the rundown of it first to kind of prepare them. The most time consuming part's the wrap. And so that kind of comes in with practice, sort of like foiling, how we, when we didn't do it a lot, we were a little slower, and now we can just slam those foils in really fast.
Yeah.
So just practice your wrapping. Like honestly, grab doll heads and practice on all different lengths and do different types of wraps. But I would say standard, start with an hour and a half as a goal for short hair or partial perm.
Okay. And my last question, in case anyone else has any other questions, sorry. Obviously, we use rods, or we can use other things in place of rods, to give the hair different shapes and sizes and whatnot. I've always been curious, and I don't know if you've ever done it, a braided perm.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally. Yes. We have another perm class that is more women, longer hair inspired. So in that one, we definitely show like braid techniques, even box braids, and then perming it. Okay. Really cool. So anything you can think of. We just don't want to use anything that's metallic, right? To wrap. I mean, I know I have to say that because someone out there is going to find something metal to you. Nothing surprises me anymore.
I know.
So as long as we're not using non-metallic things, you can even do rubber band perms. I've seen that where people do like different types of things with rubber bands and like puffs the hair kind of like in braid and then cuts. It's very interesting. Okay. People do very interesting things. So whatever you can think of, like, it's not wrong as long as it's not metal.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nicole. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer those.
Yeah, of course. Those are very thoughtful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, just a question about styling product. I didn't notice that you mentioned the sculpting gel. Would you recommend the sculpting gel with the curls, and what effect would it give?
Oh my gosh, I would absolutely recommend sculpting gel. So here's my also 2 cents, okay? I could have listed almost every single product that Ref in the styling line that Ref makes, right? The Rough Pays, the Ocean Mist, oh my goodness, right? Stay Smooth even. Stay Smooth is a great one. What sculpting gel is going to do is kind of depend on how you use it, right? If we're putting it in damp hair, the dampness is going to soften it a little bit. I don't like saying diluting, right? But it's going to soften. So you're going to get really nice formed curls. It's got the mica in there, so you're going to get a little bit more shine from it. It's going to be a very similar-ish result, honestly, to fiber mousse. Honestly, that's how it's going to be. If we're air drying, you're going to always get a little more of a stiffer result as opposed to whether we diffuse. And we diffuse, the heat kind of softens things a little bit more. So that's kind of my answer on that. I mean, it's an answer, non-answer / we can use so many other products, whatever we want to use. That's why this line is so great. I have people using thickening spray because they just even want bigger curls, right? Or root to top because they want more root lift in there. There really is no wrong product. Isn't that amazing? So they can use whatever they love, or we can switch the products out to keep it interesting. So maybe I have them on Curl Power in the beginning, and then afterwards I switch them then to, oh, I have a daughter coming home from college in the front door. I was like, what is that sound? It's okay, you can come in. These are the times, right? So we can go from Curl Power, and then maybe they want to switch it up a little bit. Then we can switch it to sculpting gel or fiber mousse or ocean mist, right? Just look at the styling reference numbers, right? Because that's going to tell you what to do: how much hold, how much shine, and how much volume. Hope that helped.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
These are great questions.
They were great questions, and that was a great little education class you did for us, Nicole. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope you don't
You're
get too
welcome.
much snow there.
I'm at home today, so it can do whatever it wants to do.
That is true. All right, so thank you. If you guys, my stylist, think of anything later that you want to ask Nicole, you can shoot me an email and I'll make sure that I get her, in touch with you. And if there's any follow-up that needs to be done, we'll make sure you guys close the loop on that. Otherwise, that is it. Thank you guys all for logging in today.
So much.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Natalie.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
You're
guys.
welcome. Have fun.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.